Imagine this: a fox darting across a field, sly and cunning, testing out dozens of tricks to get by. Now, picture a hedgehog. Small, slow, seemingly vulnerable, but with one big defense. It curls into a ball of spines and almost nothing can touch it. The ancient Greek poet Archilochus gave us this parable. The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. Isaiah Berlin, the philosopher, transformed it into a lens for human thought and leadership. So let me ask you, in life, are you more fox or more hedgehog? Welcome to this episode of the Neurokrish Immersion on the Fox and the Hedgehog. We are learning some leadership lessons from Isaiah Berlin's famous parable. Take a moment. Ask yourself, do you scatter your bets, experiment with ideas and adapt? Or do you dig deep into one big idea and defend it with all that you have got? This may be the choice that defines your leadership. Right now, as you are listening to this, you're either a fox leader or a hedgehog leader. This ancient choice will determine whether you succeed or fail in the next decade. Fox leaders are like the fox, beautiful, sleek, cunning, adaptable. Multiple strategies, quick thinking, versatile approaches. Hedgehog leaders are like the hedgehog, small, prickly, slow, simple, single focus, persistent, predictable, strategy-based. Now think about this. The fox tries to attack the hedgehog repeatedly. Every time, the hedgehog has only one play, which is it curls itself into a ball of spine, preventing the fox from attacking it. Yet, the fox keeps trying. The most successful leaders and companies in history almost are all hedgehogs, and that is what we're going to look at in this episode of the Neurokrish Immersion. Now, the fox uses countless strategies. It sneaks, it pounces, it races. It's smart, resourceful, creative. Yet, it is always defeated by the hedgehog. Why? Because the hedgehog knows one thing perfectly, which is to roll into a spiky ball. It's a simple, focused strategy, and the hedgehog never gets caught. Just like the fox and the hedgehog, fox companies chase every opportunity. Hedgehog companies master one core competency. The simple strategy often beats the complex one. Isaiah Berlin in 1953 classified every great thinker in history using this animal parable. This was Berlin's genius. He said hedgehogs had one big vision, persistent focus, and unified philosophy that guided every decision. Foxes, he said, had many strategies, adaptable thinking, multiple perspectives for each situation. The leadership question for you: are you building your career on hedgehog focus or fox adaptability? Indeed, thinkers from Plato to Shakespeare have carried these archetypes into philosophy and art. Berlin argued that thinkers and leaders can be divided into two camps. Hedgehogs, like Plato, see the world through the lens of a single unifying idea. Foxes, like Shakespeare, give us many contradictions, characters, chaos, not one truth but a kaleidoscope of human experience. He argued that neither is superior. There are two ways of being in the world, but they shape how we think, how we lead, and how we act. Now, Plato was the quintessential hedgehog. He built history's most influential philosophy into one obsessive idea: perfect forms are more real than physical reality. He said, perfect forms guide everything. Every question has one true answer. Justice and beauty are eternal truths, and indeed, his idea of the philosopher king emerges from the single unified idea of justice and beauty. Now, the leadership equivalent of Plato was Steve Jobs. Simplicity above all else. And indeed, if you read Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs, you'll understand how he focused on simplicity of design above everything else. Now, there's a risk in this. What if your one big thing is wrong? In contrast to Plato, Shakespeare is a fox. He never tells you what to think. Hamlet could be a hero or a coward, and that's fox thinking, comfortable with complexity and contradiction. Shakespeare has no single message. Every play explores different themes without judgment. He has multiple perspectives. Kings and fools both speak wisdom. Shakespeare embraces contradiction. Heroes have flaws, villains have reasons. And this indeed is the fox leadership advantage: flexibility, nuance, innovation, and resilience. The risk in this: without a core philosophy, you might stand for nothing. Hedgehogs bring focus, persistence, and purpose, but they can be rigid, overconfident, even blind to evidence that contradicts their vision. Foxes adapt quickly, think in probabilities, and entertain multiple perspectives, but they can scatter, never settling on one path. So, which mindset is closer to yours? And more importantly, which is right for our complex world? This is a question that we must ponder. What we must also understand is that our leadership style is not preference, it's also neurology. Hedgehogs and foxes literally think with different parts of their brain. The hedgehog mindset is that of convergent thinking, of purpose-driven decisions, of trusting gut instincts, and preferring certainty. The strength of this mindset is clarity and consistency. The risks are tunnel vision and rigidity. The fox mindset is of divergent thinking, adaptive responses, the ability to look at data thoroughly, and to be comfortable with ambiguity. The strength of the fox mindset is innovation and resilience. The risk is decision paralysis. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. Psychologist Philip Tetlock studied 284 experts making 80,000 predictions across 20 years, and the results, honestly, were shocking. Experts were no better than dart-throwing chimpanzees. But fox-like thinkers, the adaptable ones, consistently outperformed hedgehogs. And really, this was the bombshell. When he divided people into foxes and hedgehogs, and then tracked who got the future right, the results, really, they changed the way we should be making strategic decisions. Tetlock also called the hedgehog specialists with one big theory. They were more confident, more famous, and more quotable. But interestingly, he found them less accurate. He called generalists with multiple perspectives foxes. They were less flashy, more tentative, and often closer to the truth. So in the great prediction battle, the hedgehog's strength was unwavering focus and persistence, clear sense of purpose, strong convictions. The hedgehog weaknesses, however, was being rigid and overconfident, blind to contradictory evidence, and resistant to change. Fox strengths were quick adaptation to change, multiple perspective thinking, and comfortable with probabilities. The fox weakness was the scattered focus, difficulty in committing to one path, and the lack of clear direction. There were 4 cognitive advantages that made foxes winners. Foxes won by being more honest about what they did not know. And they had these 4 mental habits that made them better forecasters in Tetlock's study. They were open-minded. They updated their views when new evidence appeared. Now ask yourself, when did you last change your mind about something important? Foxes took probabilistic reasoning into reality. They thought in likelihoods, not certainties. 60% chance of something happening as opposed to definitely will happen. Foxes were also good at taking diverse perspectives. They borrowed ideas from many frameworks. Now, for example, ask yourself, how many different industries do you study for insights? Foxes were also good in tolerating ambiguity. They accepted complexity rather than oversimplifying it. They were comfortable with "it depends" answers. And indeed, this mirrors what is called the superforecasting revolution. Ordinary people with no security clearance were found to consistently outpredict CIA analysts who had classified information. And here's how they did it. In this study, the challenge was to test thousands of ordinary people on geopolitical predictions. The result, they outperformed professional intelligence analysts with classified access. And the discovery was that superforecasters emerged as consistently superior predictors. And what was the profile of the superforecaster? Fox-like thinking, growth mindset, numerical literacy, and intellectual humility. These skills can be learned. Right thinking process beats privileged data access. So, who beats the experts? Not analysts with decades of training, but ordinary people with fox-like minds. And once again, remember, the superforecaster is flexible, humble, opening to change their minds. Wisdom is therefore not in certainty, but in adaptability. Now let's look into the neuroscience of this, which helps us understand why. The hedgehog temperament aligns with the default mode network, the brain's narrative system that builds coherent stories about who we are and why life makes sense. But it can become rigid by filtering out inconvenient facts. The fox temperament, on the other hand, taps into the frontoparietal executive network, the brain's flexibility hub, handling task switching, working memory, and adaptation. It thrives on ambiguity and novelty, but sometimes lacks coherence. The truth is, we need both the hedgehog's meaning-making and the fox's adaptability. And therefore, the hedgehog uses his default mode network more to create coherent narratives and filter contradictory information, which puts him at risk of being resistant to correction and missing important signals. The fox uses the frontoparietal executive network for complex problem solving and cognitive flexibility, the ability to change one's mind. The strength is adaptive learning and probabilistic thinking. What is your practical takeaway? You can train your brain to think more like a fox through meditation, diverse experiences, and active error correction. This plays out in business too. Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, described the hedgehog concept. Great companies focus on one thing they do best that drives passion and economic growth. For example, he compares Abbott Laboratories and Upjohn. Both were family-run companies at a certain time. Both were at an equal place at that point in time. However, Abbott Laboratories stuck to diagnostics and nutrition and thrived. Upjohn spread itself thin like a fox and eventually it got absorbed by Pfizer. So sometimes hedgehog focus is the path to greatness. But then we live today in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And indeed, fox-like agility is essential. Think about your own work at this time. Where do you need hedgehog focus? Where do you need fox-like agility? Now, what was Collins' revolutionary business discovery? If foxes are better predictors, how did Jim Collins discover that hedgehog companies dramatically outperform fox companies? The answer reveals when to be a fox and when to be a hedgehog. For strategy formation, use fox thinking to understand your market and find your competitive edge. For strategy implementation, use hedgehog focus to execute relentlessly on that edge. The hedgehog concept: great companies thrive with one unifying focus. Simplicity beats sophistication in business execution. Knowing when to switch between fox and hedgehog modes is the ultimate leadership skills. And remember that we do live in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And let me take the opportunity to remind you that we've spoken about the VUCA world also in our podcast, Trumping in a VUCA World, where we asked the question, how does Donald Trump thrive and how does his approach thrive in a VUCA world? So here's the real lesson. It's not fox or hedgehog. It's knowing when to be each. It's important that we hold vision and clarity like the hedgehog. But it's also important that we adapt and adjust like the fox. Neuroscience shows us that resilience comes from balancing our two networks, the default mode network and the frontoparietal executive network. Leadership also comes from balancing vision with agility. The wisest leaders don't choose. They master the dance, holding vision like a hedgehog, yet adapting like a fox. The real secret: knowing when to double down and when to pivot. That perhaps is the real secret to navigating our unpredictable world. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, please subscribe, like, and share. We are on Apple, YouTube, and Spotify. Thank you so much for listening.